Again, this is a developing story. There has been an explosion.
Absolutely shocking.
Some called from rooftops for help as the water rose, and as rescuers and Japanese military helicopters pulled dozens to safety. Entire homes were surrounded or even carried away as Jiasu City was inundated with floodwater.
Well, as the refugees fled, other camera crews recording a really appalling scene. A Hungarian camera woman appears to kick and deliberately trip refugees running through the field. And at one point, she trips a man who is carrying a young child.
It was moments before takeoff when flames and smoke rippled from the British Airways Boeing 777. Within minutes, the 157 passengers and 13 crew evacuated the plane using the aircraft's inflatable emergency chutes.
Well, as the refugees fled, other camera crews recording a really appalling scene. A Hungarian camera woman appears to kick and deliberately trip refugees running through the field. And at one point, she trips a man who is carrying a young child.
The far-right television station she works for says she will be fired. Here's the kick on the man carrying a child. You see she just sticks her leg out. He's got the child in his arms there, in his right arm, and you see he falls down on top of that child. Now, the TV station said in a statement, really echoing what a lot of people are saying on social media at the moment, and that is, quote, the camera operator's behaviour was completely unacceptable. Look at the kick there, and then another one. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
This morning, investigators are trying to find the cause of a dramatic airplane fire that put 170 lives in jeopardy at Las Vegas's main airport. British Airways Flight 2276 to London aborted its takeoff Tuesday because of what was described as catastrophic engine failure.
Everybody on board had to use the emergency exits to get out. Maria Villarreal is at McCarran International Airport, just south of the Las Vegas Strip. Maria, good morning.
Well, good morning. The fire station here, actually the airport here, has its own fire station, and within 60 seconds, crews were actually on the tarmac. But there were 14 people that were injured when they had to slide to safety.
It was moments before takeoff when flames and smoke rippled from the British Airways Boeing 777.
Speedbird, Mayday, Speedbird 2276, request fire services.
Speedbird 2276, heavy fire services are on the way.
The pilot reported a fire in the twin-engine plane's left engine.
Speedbird 2276 heavy, we are evacuating on the runway. We have a fire, I repeat, we are evacuating.
It was scary. You know, we didn't know whether the thing was going to explode or what. It was mass hysteria.
Within minutes, the 157 passengers and 13 crew evacuated the plane using the aircraft's inflatable emergency chutes.
I was one of the first people off the plane and jumped down the slide, and I looked up and the flames seemed to be about twice the height of the aircraft.
It's a long flight, and we all know that, you know, it's a fully tanked aeroplane and anything can happen. So if there's explosions or whatever, then it's, you know, it's a serious thing.
Dominic Worthington was a passenger on the flight. He shot this video as he walked across the tarmac with dozens of others.
Just grateful for what the captain did, how quickly he responded, and his crew as well. Everybody, you know, at the end of the day, it was a serious fire.
It does not look like the fire reached the airplane cabin, and this morning all of the runways here in Las Vegas have been reopened. At this point, they are towing the airplane off to the side so that investigators can get a better look and figure out what happened. Nora?
All right, Maria, thank you so much.
Here I am standing in the middle of the Royal River, and the water isn't even up to my knees. Hydrologists say this river could be down at least a foot right now, and it's not just here that they're seeing this. From Crystal Lake in Gray to Maguntacook Lake in Camden, even the Royal River in North Yarmouth, many bodies of water showing obvious signs of a drought. Looking at the map, abnormally dry conditions exist in most of the lower half of the state, with a moderate drought in much of Cumberland and York counties, extending north into the foothills. Except for the month of June, this summer was well below normal for precipitation. Now the moisture is necessary for trees and plants to absorb and foliage to develop.
I come here every day, twice a day sometimes, but it was a lot higher. I'd say it's at least a foot lower.
In southern Maine and southeast New Hampshire, we're running anywhere from 4 to 8 or 9 inches below normal since January 1st, which is quite a bit of water.
With rain expected Thursday into Friday, hydrologists say urban flooding and flash flooding are a concern.
Catastrophic floodwaters are rising this morning in Japan after days of heavy rain. People are literally crying for help and stranded on top of the cars and the homes. The force was strong enough to rip buildings from their foundations. This unprecedented rain hit the city of Jiasu, that's north of Tokyo. Seth Doan is tracking the devastation from Beijing. Seth, good morning.
Good morning. Japan has been pounded with heavy rain for 2 days in a row, causing flooding and landslides.
Some called from rooftops for help as the water rose and as rescuers and Japanese military helicopters pulled dozens to safety. Entire homes were surrounded or even carried away as Jiasu City was inundated with floodwater. The nearby Kinagawa River burst its banks, pouring through a flood wall, sending a torrent of water through the city of 65,000, about an hour's drive north of Tokyo. Residents tried to save some belongings or navigate through the floodwaters in tiny boats. The deluge is a result of a low-pressure system that's the tail end of a tropical storm passing through Japan. The fear is more rivers could overflow and rain could trigger more landslides. One already buried a home. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called the heavy rains unprecedented, adding the priority now is saving lives.
Night has fallen in this part of the world. That will, of course, hamper rescue efforts, and authorities say it will likely be days before the floodwaters recede. Jeff, this is the 18th typhoon to hit Japan this year.
Rescue operation just got underway, the aerial rescue just within the last hour or so. And in fact, as we walk over here, you can see that there are a number of helicopters in the air. In fact, I counted 11. Some of them military helicopters. I think some of them might be news helicopters as well. But what you're watching over there unfold is there's a supermarket off in the distance. And we know that dozens of people were there sleeping overnight, waiting to be rescued. So the supermarket is surrounded by floodwaters. And what the Japanese military is doing is they have helicopters landing on the rooftop of that supermarket. We saw people in groups waiting to be picked up. We know one group of 10 was just picked up within the last hour or so, within the last 30 minutes, actually. But there are more people who need to be rescued. And of course, the unknown right now is how many more people in Joso in some of these hard-hit flooded areas are still waiting inside their homes, inside apartment buildings, people who spent the night surrounded by this water.
How much concern is there about Fukushima? Of course, that's been a concern for Japanese people for a long time, and now with this, how is that being complicated? What are people saying?
Well, the power provider, TEPCO, says that the situation where they had a water leak in excess of what has been kind of happening ever since the disaster in 2011, which was a slow leak situation, they say that was only going on for 3 hours. There were reports of several hundred tons of contaminated water being leaked into the ocean. However, they've been testing the radiation levels in the area around the nuclear plant, and they say that the levels are normal and that the leak that overwhelmed their drainage systems has been contained. But when you look at the destructive force of water like this, and as you guys know, in a natural disaster, oftentimes the wind, even in an earthquake situation, the shaking is not what causes the majority of destruction and casualties, but it's the water. It has the ability to do so much damage, and at Fukushima in particular, a lot of the contaminated radioactive water is being stored above ground in these storage containers. And so this event, while it might have been what's considered a minor leak at Fukushima, it does underscore the ongoing threat there of what could happen if there was a disaster like another tsunami that would hit all of that contaminated water being stored outside.
Want to show you some video we shot earlier today. Kevin Frederick, my photographer, was out here during what he almost described as a monsoon. He says that the water was just pouring down, and he was here during the flooding. You can see in some of the video that the water is just like halfway up the side of cars, and they're having a tough time getting down Bank Street. Pretty much that water closed down Bank Street. I have with me now live Mike Vaquito. Now he's going to talk over this video because he was here. He's with the Sea Hunt restaurant, and it is right here on Bank Street. Mike, can you tell me, what did it look like earlier today?
It was a deluge. Within minutes, from just rain like this until it started pouring in our threshold here, flooded out our entire dining room. We had to close for the day, possibly tomorrow too. It was cars actually floated sideways across the road. Me and the owner, Kyle, were directing traffic up the side road because you just couldn't get through. It was impassable. Now, the rain was pretty heavy. They didn't. It actually was happened so quickly. They didn't get to shut down the road. Is that correct? Exactly. There was no vehicles or police vehicles here because, I mean, they just didn't have time to get here. It happened within minutes. A tractor trailer though came through. Oh yes, the tractor trailer came through, and it was like we could have surfed on the wake. Actually, came right in our door into the bar room. 60, 70 pounds were actually moved across the sidewalk here.
It's good to have a sense of humor when now, unfortunately, you have to deal with all this.
What can you do? You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. I mean, there's nothing else you can do about it.
All right.
Just clean up.
Yes, and I'm glad no one was injured. Everyone's okay.
No, everybody's fine.
All right, thanks so much. We'll actually try to get a look inside the restaurant a little later on. For now, though, there are fire trucks just down the road. They're actually at another restaurant, so we'll find out why they're there. There are some other cars being towed away, so still lots of things happening here on Bank Street. Luckily, though, those floodwaters have receded. We're live in New London. Tina Dittel, News 8.
The White House has announced it will accept dramatically more refugees desperate to escape from Syria. You have seen these pictures. refugees from these war-torn nations here, Syria in particular, and also Iraq, pouring into Europe. Either arrival, along with tens of thousands from Iraq and Afghanistan, putting an enormous strain on Germany and Austria and many other countries. Here is what White House spokesman Josh Earnest said the U.S. is now willing to do.
This year, that will end, the fiscal year that will end at the end of this month, the United States is on track to take in about 1,500 Syrian refugees. The president has directed his team to scale up that number next year. And he's informed his team that he would like them to accept make preparations to accept at least 10,000 Syrian refugees in the next fiscal year.
All right, Michelle Kosinski, working the White House beat as always. And so when you hear the number 10,000, listen, that's a lot more, than what they're taking in right now. But big picture, how much of a difference will that make?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. And it's an interesting number when you look at it from two perspectives. I mean, first of all, this is about a 9 times increase over the number that was taken in this past fiscal year. So as the White House terms it, it's a significant ramping up. But you take that number 10,000, and today, finally, we do get a number. But you compare it to the millions of Syrians who've been displaced, what other European countries are taking in, Germany possibly 800,000 in the next year, Britain's first saying no and then changing course and saying, okay, we'll take 20,000. That's still double what the U.S. is going to expect. So obviously there are questions about that. And the White House isn't answering too many of them as to the thinking, as to how exactly they arrived at that number. What they repeatedly say, though, is that Homeland Security comes first. National security, of course, is the top priority. And each one of these refugees who are referred by the UN, so these aren't people running across the border, these are people who apply within their countries. Vetting them by the U.S. takes a year to a year and a half per person. Not a quick process, and so it will take some time, although there are already many people in the pipeline. I mean, there were 17,000 referrals over the past year, so it might not take that long to vet them all, especially if that's been started for some of them. But this is the way the U.S. is going to continue to do it, so they're not going to speed them through. But the White House is saying, the best way to help these people is really by giving them more humanitarian assistance within their own countries. That said, though, they are significantly increasing the number that will be resettled here in the U.S.
Welcome back to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. Topping our World Lead today, allegations that U.S. military officials altered ISIS intelligence assessments, exaggerating the success of the U.S.-led coalition's fight against the terrorist group. And now CNN has learned that the Pentagon's watchdog, the Inspector General, is investigating. Let's get right to CNN's Barbara Starr live at the Pentagon. Barbara, what are your sources telling you about this?
Hi, Jake. After weeks of rumors, defense officials today finally did confirm the Inspector General investigating these allegations. The big question is how broad, how deep, how far does all of this go? The allegation appears to be that Defense Intelligence Agency military intelligence analysts claim that some of their work was altered by higher ups so the progress in the war would look better all the way up the chain of command. So a complaint was made to the Inspector General. It's now being looked at. So is it illegal? Is it inappropriate? Well, experts are telling us that, you know, in intelligence, you can have different interpretations of the same facts, and it's okay to have different interpretations. What is not okay is to alter basic fundamental intelligence and try and make it look better. Of course, we know that this is so sensitive because back in 2003, the world went down this road when it watched the war, the original invasion into Iraq emerge, and it was later discovered that that was based on faulty intelligence. No indication that that's what's happening here to that extent, but right now, all of this very sensitive at the Pentagon. Defense Secretary Ash Carter has already told his top intelligence officials to make sure when he gets intelligence that it is the unvarnished truth. Jake?
All right, Barbara Starr live at the Pentagon for us. Thank you so much.
Health Organization positive outlook in the fight against Ebola is certainly a welcome relief for the continent. But the risk of reappearance of the disease still remains. In Sierra Leone, 3 more people have tested positive for Ebola. Despite this setback, the World Health Organization says it is possible to bring the Ebola epidemic to an end this year.
Our goal is zero transmission in the human population, and I think that remains very possible within 2015.
The World Health Body says tight surveillance and tracing contacts of infected people remains crucial.
Remember, for many countries, they're thinking, or ministries or health facilities, it's like, oh, we hit zero, let's go do all the other things that we haven't been doing. So phase 3 is really all about how to prioritize those things and make sure they don't get dropped and that any residual risk is managed.
During the course of the epidemic, the outbreak has ebbed, only to flare back again. Liberia was declared Ebola-free in May, but a fresh cluster of cases reappeared nearly 2 months later. Liberia's last case was subsequently discharged on July the 23rd. Scientists say sexual transmission is the most likely explanation for the resurgence in Liberia, since the virus can live on in semen beyond the usual 21-day incubation period. Susan Mongeli, CCTV.
A delusional woman in distress.
And they're from another planet. And I knew this. Oh my goodness. Back up, back up!
Demonstrations in the streets. The death of an officer in the line of duty.
Okay.
All recorded by police body cameras. Devices more departments and politicians are embracing in the wake of high-profile police shootings, like the death of Walter Scott in South Carolina.
Thank you for your patience.
The Los Angeles Police Department just launched the largest body camera program in the country, as dozens of other departments are testing body cameras, including Seattle Police, which the U.S. Department of Justice found to have patterns of excessive force back in 2011.
We don't have them recording all the time.
12 officers have been equipped with body cameras for the pilot program.
And we're learning a lot. We're learning a lot about how we'll have to revise our policy. We're learning a lot about how to flag video. We're learning a lot about the functional and technical requirements.
But with officers across the country collecting thousands of hours of video, there's growing debate over who will have access to the footage.
I think we need to strengthen our privacy protections so that moments in people's private lives don't end up on YouTube after public records requests.
Few states have enacted legislation around body camera footage. Some proposals call for restricting all videos. The LAPD has no plans to release video to the public.
If you hide those videos away, you defeat transparency.
The American Civil Liberties Union says certain videos should be made available if it involves police use of force or has anything to do with a complaint filed by the public.
If the police or the government decides which videos they're going to release and which they're not, body cameras go from being a tool for transparency into a propaganda tool.
Seattle police currently strips the audio and heavily blurs the videos they release on YouTube, with exceptions.
They will never make videos of rape victims, of juveniles and others publicly available, even when we overblur it.
Among the people shown in videos posted by the Seattle police is Miles Mohawk Partman. He was arrested at a Black Lives Matter rally after police say he moved aggressively toward an officer.
You're under arrest for assault 3.
Partman, who hasn't been charged in the January incident, disputes the officer's account and says the video backs him up.
Why you having body cams on? We do.
So it's more of, do you want the truth out there or do you want your privacy? You have to decide which one.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
A dilemma more states are facing as they adopt the new technology. Ned Barker, The Associated Press.
Wow, this video is so hard to watch. It's like you feel your stomach dropping along with that crane as it ended up crashing through the roof of the Grand Mosque in Mecca. It killed dozens upon dozens of worshipers. There's a look at the crane on the inside of the building. All these people, millions of people flocking to the city for the annual Muslim pilgrimage. There are hundreds of people that have been injured as a result of this accident. Here is a look at the weather at the time. The Directorate of the Saudi Civil Defense officially blaming weather for that crane toppling over. You can see the wind was driving the rain all over the place at the time. We would also like to show you radar imagery of what was happening weather-wise at the time of the accident. We know in Mecca that there were 20 to 30 mile per hour winds officially recorded, but certainly individual higher wind gusts, the likely culprit of driving that crane to topple over onto the mosque.
So you can see worshippers scrambling in the aftermath of that crane collapse. That is a shot of the Masjid Al-Haram there in Mecca. And you see that collapsed crane. If you're just joining us, we want to remind you of the news that this accident caused the death of some 65 people, 154 injured. Of course, this is a developing story. That number could change. They could move up. But to be clear, this is a mosque that is considered to be one of Islam's holiest sites. It contains the Kaaba, which is a key focal point during the annual Hajj pilgrimage. It is a mosque that can accommodate tens of thousands of people at any one time. And quite clearly, there were a number of worshippers in the mosque at the time. We are looking at these pictures that we're just getting in here at CNN of the aftermath of and what that more do we know about this weather issue, this sandstorm?
So, Aisha, we've been talking about a dust storm across the Middle East for several days now. Started on Sunday. It's been working its way down. But really, I think the cause here, if it was weather-related, was a thunderstorm that popped up right here over Mecca. You can see the thunderstorm that pops up, and right here you see that anvil cloud is what we call it, those orange colors in there, temperatures that are very cold, and that indicates that that's a very strong thunderstorm, something that would be pretty rare for the Middle East. Obviously a very dry area, desert region. They only average around 5 millimeters of rainfall for the entire month of September. Only 1 or 2 days on average receive any rain. So for this storm, it would certainly be a rare storm, but it's also very strong. You can tell just by the satellite signature as it pops up. And what you would get when this happens is winds that could gust 40, 50 kilometers per hour, even higher. You would also expect to see lightning with a thunderstorm like this. So, hate to speculate, but when we're just looking at weather causes of something like this, you would certainly point to wind first and foremost, and also the potential for lightning as well. When you get a storm like this, we heard that the temperatures drop. This is according to the airport observation that we have there in Mecca. The temperature dropped from 45 or 43 degrees all the way down to 25 degrees in just a period of about an hour or two. So that would tell us that this rain-cooled air from this strong thunderstorm really pushed out, and it can push out in all directions. And you can get a sudden wind changing the direction from west to south is what we had in this particular scenario. So certainly, there's some, telltale signs of weather which could cause something like this. But certainly, what we know for sure is a very strong thunderstorm popped up right around 13 GMT, which would be about 4 in the afternoon local time. So early in the afternoon, this thing was getting started and really peaking mid-afternoon. We started to get reports here in the last hour or two. So the timing of this thunderstorm really fits as well.
I'm joined on the line by Khalid Al-Maini. He's the editor-in-chief of the Saudi Gazette. I understand. Are you in Jeddah this hour, sir?
Yes, I'm Al-Ma'ina, and I'm the editor-at-large. I'm in Jeddah, which is 75 kilometers away from Mecca. I just spoke to people in Mecca. There is a bit of chaos, and there is, since people are dazed, 87 people killed so far, and 184 plus a little bit more. But so far, no direct cause, but as you said, Mecca has been affected by inclement weather for the past few days. Heavy dust storm followed by rain, followed by dust storms. Even Jeddah, visibility almost nil in certain areas could have caused. But again, we have to see also whether standard operating procedures were followed in setting up these cranes, because they look very ominous. I was in Mecca a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and you could see these cranes, and one wonders heavy dust or whatever it is could have caused the collapse.
You mentioned the cranes and some of the pictures. You're exactly right. I mean, all these dozens and dozens and dozens of cranes hovering over the Grand Holy Mosque because of this expansion project right now, and not just adding floors to the mosque, but also digging underground to install a metro. There is a lot going on in terms of construction in Mecca right now.
I think, yes. I think also, I don't know whether there was soil testing or whether there was any precautionary measures to be taken, because Mecca has become like during the Boston Big Dig. Everywhere there are construction sites around. Now, we don't even know whether the crane was properly set up or whether it was the rain. There were rumors, and there was a picture too on the social media of a lightning strike. All this has to be taken into consideration. But right now, it's a very sad day. Luckily, it happened at the Maghrib time or at the end of the day when the sun set, because there were less people there. Because today is Friday, the Holy Muslim Day, and during the Jum'ah prayers or the Jum'ah sermon, the mosque is jam-packed. So, in a way, that lessens the casualty figure.
Close call after close call. As a man leads police on a car chase near Los Angeles. His driving is erratic as he barely misses other cars, sometimes driving on the wrong side of the road. The pursuit begins around 6:30 p.m. after deputies are alerted to a carjacking. The suspect takes law enforcement through several jurisdictions, hijacking another car along the way. After he leaves a freeway, California Highway Patrol pulls what's called a pit maneuver, sending the car careening into another vehicle and ultimately stopping the stolen car. But the man isn't done. He takes off on foot and with a handgun fires off a shot into the air as he goes.
The guy's running no more than maybe 10 feet from me. Pistol in the air, shooting. I thought he shot somebody. Took off, and then an officer took off and chased him, went into Kristen Pitts. And then I was getting ready to dig a hole.
The suspect takes cover in this barbecue restaurant, reportedly filled with about 80 people.
He ended up grabbing one of our managers and started saying that he was just really afraid.
Was he holding him hostage?
Yes, he was holding her hostage. He pointed the gun straight into her face.
I see a guy, blue shirt, bald, just rush in, very panicked, very seemed agitated. Rushes in and rushes straight to my to-go box where I'm working, and he points a gun at me and he demands for water. He tells me, I need water, give me water.
In waves, people begin to emerge from the restaurant, some with their hands up, others holding on to their young children. The suspect barricades himself in the restaurant, keeping several people hostage. Law enforcement surrounds the building and a hostage negotiator is called to the scene. Deputies demand the suspect put down his weapon, but it becomes clear the man isn't going to cooperate.
One of the deputies could see through the window that the suspect was walking near the hostages
and he was waving a gun around in the air and acting very erratic. So the deputy felt it was necessary to protect the lives of the hostages to take the shot. He fired one shot. It hit the suspect.
Then a SWAT team goes in. There's a series of shots.
When they entered the restaurant, the suspect was down crawling on the floor, and he picked up the gun, rearming himself, and that's when a second deputy-involved shooting occurred, and that ultimately ended the suspect's life.